Brilliant. So then the things I'll be covering is give you a prognosis of what's the usual reporting landscape we come across, when it comes to ERP or even multiple other business systems coming into that. What we've seen as an experience of how the business grows, how that journey is. I mean, reporting is a journey from our perspective. Let me just restore that so you get the full screen. Reporting is a journey from our perspective, and there are different levels on that journey, which I'll talk through about. Then I'll talk about the ZAP fit and talk about how this is a scalable solution. So if you look at our usual reporting, landscape from an ERP perspective, what we tend to see is, and as an example, I've taken Dynamics 365 as ERP. This could be any of the popular, SAP, Sage, or Syspro, those popular ERPs. But essentially, you need, let me just put this down. You have a data source and you need reporting at the end of it. I mean, I'm using Power BI as an example. This could be our BI tool as well. But that's the journey, and there's some transformation you need to do or you need to go through to get that result. Unfortunately, all those claims of can I connect and bring the data, all of that will work, and you start straight away going doing the reporting does not unfortunately exist, that panacea, because for a few reasons. One, there is no guarantee you understand the table structures and relationships on that ERP side. Unfortunately, the back end of ERPs aren't user-friendly. You will have cryptic names on the tables itself. Instead of plain English, you won't know what relationships each table has. You might even struggle to find where the data exists, the column exists from there. And then the part is how do you transform it into something which is compatible to you through the BI tool or the reporting tool that you have on the front end side, which you can report from. The other part is if you open that and allow people to bring data in different silos, how do you trust that information? How do you trust that the gross margin on a particular report is the correct one that is being used consistently throughout the business, and it's one particular calculation which everyone is using? How do you trust that information? How do you govern that information? So that's the second element of this transformation piece or this journey piece that often gets overlooked. Then the third part is, are you actually allowed to look at that information? Again, if you don't have any controls, any ground rules, any standards, any governance in place, how do you control, say, you build a salaries report? How do you control that is limited to just HR or somebody on the exec side to review, and not everyone can review it? Simple things like that. I'm not saying that's how all companies should work, but usually that is an information that is quite sensitive and not shared, with the wider group. How do you control those type of elements in a scenario where there's just a data source on any BI tool, but there is no transformation layer in between? And the final one is, what if you had more data? I mean, we're just talking about one ERP in this case, but what if you had a CRM system? What if you had some legacy databases or historical information in say, an Oracle or a SQL database? What if you had Excel sheets where you're doing probably budgeting or forecasting and you need to involve that into your P&L report to look at actuals versus budget and variance and so on and so forth? How do you manage all of that? How do you do all the transformation, and how do you unify that information so that the output that you're getting, where you can build a report from, you can trust and you can govern properly, so the whole business can actually use it to their advantage? So that's the kind of landscape you come across. But just to add to that, essentially the situation is, data is extracted individually, either into Excel or BI tool. It's spread across multiple systems, and the problem is essentially you have silos, reporting in silos, trusting what the report consists of and the data where it comes off. And it probably covers the second part of it, which is traceability. How do you trace back a value or a number on a particular report or a dashboard and work backwards to the right table, the right attribute, or the right dimension within your source system and say, yes, I can see the end-to-end process, and yes, I trust this is working the right way. So these are kind of the problems we come across or see on an ongoing basis. The element that I want to cover here is where ZAP really fits, and that I want to bring it in context of what we see as when you want to become a data-driven business, as commonly known as in the market. What's that journey really looks like? Where does it start, and where does kind of ZAP type products come in, and so on and so forth? So usually it's always starts with Excel. Let's start. Excel is an exceptional tool in terms of reporting. You export your individual applications data into Excel, build reports on top. Seen loads of that. I've seen multitudes of tabs and macros and this and that. I mean, just an exceptional tool, but unfortunately, there are problems here. And when I talk about problems, these problems are on the journey of that business, which wants to become more data driven. I'm not saying Excel is a bad tool. For a lot of companies, Excel is as far as their journey would go from a reporting perspective, and they're probably quite happy with that. But there are problems here if you want to when you outgrow Excel. What are those problems? That's what I'm capturing here. So knowledge remains with people. That was a recent demo with a customer that had a manufacturing ERP, and they had this massive 20-tab Excel sheet. It actually took that one person 20 minutes every month to create that report. But the problem with that was only run once by that individual at the end of the month. The remaining 29, 30 days of the month, they had no clue what the business was doing. So that's the whole silo thing and the knowledge thing, where it's a people-driven process fundamentally. The other element is, load times and scale and response times and so on and so forth. It's a pivot table, you've got the data and you can build reports, but if the volume of data is quite high, I mean, it can take forever to load and sometimes even crash. So the scalability is something which is a question mark. But again, for some businesses on their journey of becoming data driven, this is as far as they want to go, and this is good enough for them. What is the next stage? The stage 2 is buy business BI tool, something flashy like Power BI. Again, brilliant tool from visualization, probably one of the best in the market. How do you do this? You do it in two ways. You either export the data into Excel, prepare the data, and then put it into the BI tool, or do a direct query where possible into the application. I think D365 with Power BI gives you some openings to API openings where you can bring out some data from some core tables, but there are limitations to how far you can push that. Again, for some businesses, this is great, and this is where their journey may end. They may not need to become more data driven, or that's as far as their business wants to go. But there are still certain problems here which come in when you on that growth trajectory, and you want to question your data more and analyze your data more and so on and so forth. And those are the problems are. Preparation is big. You need to, it's like making ERP information compatible with a BI tool that can absorb that, consume that information, and then allow you to build a report on top. That can take a lot of time, that preparation of data. The other part of scale still comes in here, probably slightly lesser than Excel, but it is still there that if the volumes increase, the load times and response times could be a problem, because in this case, you're doing a live connection or a direct query onto the application. I mean, on the other end, with some BI tools, I've also noticed that the source application or the source ERP may even slow down whilst you're running those reports and stuff like that. That's why people tend to do nightly updates or not nightly reports and kind of work one day behind to the actual live data in that terms. But again, this is still a people-driven process. The process hasn't substantially taken over what people are doing in the business. But for a lot of businesses, this still works, but it's the next element which where kind of ZAP comes in, which I want to talk about. So the third stage on that journey is we may need a data warehouse. Let's build one. I mean, there's another stage of data lake and so on and so forth, but for the purposes of this webinar, we're not going to talk about that. But it's let's build a data warehouse. Now, fundamentally, if I look at a data warehouse, look at that as a black box. You're dumping all that information into one place. You control how much information you want to bring. You control which tables, which source, whatnot. So it is not just limited to ERP. It could be any transactional system. You dump it into there. You transform that information into there, and you connect your BI front end piece, visualization piece on top, and you report off that. So that's what a data warehouse is, and it has got great potential in terms of scale, support, and load times and response. But still, there are some challenges you need to remember when you go on this journey. You need the right skill set. You can build a data warehouse on your own. I mean, SQL, this, that. You can easily buy tools and build it on your own. But you still need a certain level of skill set. It's highly IT related that you would need, which will be required to build a data warehouse in-house. And there is the other element of maintaining that data warehouse. So if you upgraded your ERP or you upgraded your CRM system, how do you support that within your data warehouse? Doesn't mean you have to rebuild the whole data warehouse. I mean, you probably gone through a few upgrades or changes on the ERPs as well from one source to another. How do you take care of those situations? So those are kind of the problems that may come up. But that's like the third stage or the peak stage where kind of ZAP fits in. So very quickly, what is ZAP then? ZAP is an end-to-end data management and BI tool. And how it works is fundamentally there are kind of 3-4 stages. So there is integration, when we talk about data management, which is connecting to a source and that information. On other BI tools, that's there's no prepackaged. In our world, we do a lot of prepackaged stuff. I'll show you in a minute on the demo with the ERP and CRM systems we connect with. So we can plug, play, and grow literally in half a day with a tool like ours on some of the popular ERPs or CRMs in the market. Then there, once you've connected, you've got the data, you've got the tables, you've got the structure, the transformation or the modeling of that, so you can produce a model which you can report on. How does that work? How easy or difficult that is? And again, in the case of we built the model, there's a lot of prepackaged stuff which we'll talk about. In the case of other BI tools, obviously it won't be there, so you're manually doing that project. But that's kind of acceleration we provide. There is also usability is subjective, but if you don't have the core model that is produced out of the box, how do you bring more information from, say, custom tables or custom columns within your ERP or CRM into this and build that? So that's all drag and drop, point and click, and I'll show you in a minute on the demo. The final piece of that data management, and which often gets overlooked and probably covers the most risk, is the governance element of that. When you're building a data warehouse, when you see all these manual pieces coming into place, often governance is overlooked or becomes whereas in terms of ZAP, that is something which is key and central to the whole product. So in our world, there are 2 levels of governance. One is how often and how much data you bring in, every minute, every 15 minutes, every day, however you want to do it, and how much control you have that. Do you have it to an individual table level at a source? In the case of ZAP, you can. So that level of control. And the other side of governance is, like I was suggesting in that example, who sees that information? So that information could be, like I said, salaries and stuff, a report has been built, who can review that information, and so on and so forth. So that level of control is there as well. Finally, why are we doing all this? It's all about analytics. So that's the front end element. We have our own front end. We today support Power BI and Tableau as well. So if you have investments in that product, you can continue to have that, and we can be that back end for that Power BI, which then connects to all the sources of data that you want to bring in. But in terms of prepackaged, there are lots of reports and pre-built reports available as well, which I'll cover through the demo in a minute, which comes out of the box. But fundamentally, this is the kind of panacea you're looking at. And a lot of this comes as standard with ZAP. ZAP can be the central piece or the central and the end piece as well. But for the end piece on the front end side, you can use Power BI, Tableau, or RBI too. So without further ado, let me switch from here onto the demo very quickly. So this is a web-based system. So I'm on a URL, I'm using Chrome. You can use any browser. It is web native. It's HTML5 enabled as well. So when I resize the screen, it resizes to the screen itself. And it looks really good on a tablet. Smartphones and stuff, I mean, you need to look at what KPIs you want to show on a smartphone, because the screen size itself is small, but it will resize, and you will have the touch, opportunities and stuff that you usually get with any kind of HTML5 enabled tool. All these reports are going into a dashboard. All these reports, or majority of these reports, are available on Power BI as well. Like I said, we support Power BI, so we're not competing with Power BI, we're complementary to Power BI. So this is like a GL, ledger overview, P&L, and so on and so forth. All of that is available as well. There are slight distinctions between ZAP and Power BI on the front end side. which I'll cover, but at no point we're trying to compete with Power BI. We're actually complementary to Power BI. And we have customers who use us in between as that data management piece with reporting on Power BI, and data sources could be aplenty. So coming back to the demo itself, we've kind of got three pieces to the product, and I'll cover them one by one. The first piece is the consumer view. That view fundamentally is for users who are interacting with dynamic published reports. They are not people who are going to build reports or do any modeling, but they're going to interact with the dynamic reports that are built for them. And when I say dynamic, what I mean by that is you can have filters, slices at the top, make choices, and things will change, and so on and so forth. So in this case, I've got company, if you've got single or multi-company, dates. Dates we manage really well. We timestamp every transaction. In this case, it's day and month and day, but you can easily create a hierarchy on the data warehouse side of the product, which can be year, quarter, month, week, day, or year, semester, quarter, month, week, day, however you want to slice that information. So you've got slices at the top. After that, you've got some performance cards. Again, quick value that it can bring is identify you what's working, what's not working, where you want to put your efforts into, and so on and so forth. You got descriptions happening in the background, which you can change, amend, but this is basically I've hovered my cursor, and there is information available to review how it's calculated, what it means, and so on and so forth. As an example, on this finance dashboard, I've got profit and loss on the left, cash in the center, and balance sheet on the right. Simple things I can do, hover my mouse, and it'll give me a tooltip of what that information is. Double click from the month, it'll go into the day for me. If I right click, this is like an expense dashboard. If I right click, I can move from a graph to another dashboard. Here in this case, it's an expense dashboard. It'll carry forward the information for me. What's done extra is it's also added if I have any extra filters on the table. In this case, I've got a budget, which is an Excel sheet, which I've produced, but I've added it here. But again, interaction, you can move, you can see the review, the splits, and so on and so forth. I mean, I quite like these as a quick trend of how expenses have moved and stuff, but very quickly, if you wanted, you can download information and drill down to the level of that transaction. This is something Power BI would struggle with. That's the extra element on our kind of BI tool. But up until here, it should be straightforward. Throw a button. On the other row and column type reporting that you get with the tool, Power BI sometimes struggles with that as well. I mean, you can do row and column, but it's mostly visuals, KPIs, dashboards, and so on and so forth, which Power BI is really good at. So this is a finance element. If I go back, I'll show you some of the other stuff. So again, back to the same place where we started. I've got APAR, I've got cash. If I want to interrogate that, again, right click. I'm going our dial to a dashboard. Again, talking through what is there on the screen. You have the slices at the top. So company, date, ledger, but in this case, we've added customer group as well. You can change any of these dashboards. You can amend, you can edit, you can remove if you wanted to. This is all about giving you a head start. This is not about claiming we've got all the reports, that you need. No, this is all about giving you a head start. And it also really depends where you are on that journey. You may be in an advanced level where you already know exactly what reports work for your business. Every business is unique. Every business, the way it reports most of the times, especially the key few reports, is always unique. So we may have a semblance of that report here already, or you may want to build it from scratch. Up to you. But these reports are essentially a head start towards doing that. But same concept, slicers, performance cards at the top. Again, tooltips and descriptions and whatnot. You can click from a dial. You can open the aging report of that. And again, so the same concepts follow what the aging is, and you can look at the transaction that is there. So that's on the finance side. If I move down from there on the ERP side, if I looked at some other areas, say sales, we've got a high level dashboard. that kind of, I mean, now I'm trying to just show some of the visual capabilities of the product. So simple things like you click on something and you can drill down. That is there. If it's not, it'll create you a drill down. You've got dials in place where if I clicked on the information, so this is my quarter to date, that was my last quarter, this was my last year, and this is what my target is. So you get things like that. I really like bubble charts. Bubble charts for me, if you hover the mouse, it'll give you a tooltip of what that information is. In this case, it's line amount, margin, and quantity. But the position of that bubble chart is what makes this very interesting for me. So if I'm here, if I look at this, I've got, the margin is reasonable. The quantity is quite large. That's why the ball is quite big. And the amount is quite big. But if I look at this one, the margin is higher for lesser quantity that I'm selling. So can I sell more of these? And if I look at this side, and if I hover over my mouse here, and probably towards the end, that might be suitable. If I look at this and I'm like, margin is low, we don't really sell much. Should we have that product? I mean, look, analysis, BI, reporting, KPIs, all of that is what is working for me, what is right for me, can I do more of that right things, what is the anomaly, how can I change it, and make decisions on that. And BI, reporting, KPI, whichever tool you use, it has to suffice that discussion point internally as a business and individuals, whoever are analyzing that. And if that tool is not allowing you to do that, then you need to genuinely consider what tools you have in the business, what systems you have in the business, and what processes you have in the business that can allow you to do that. So that's like the front end view of it, consumer view, people dynamically, interacting with dynamic reports. If I move on to the second kind of stage of the product, and this is where this is, so I'm in editor mode. I'm still URL. I'm still on Chrome. So everything is web-based. But the element is I've taken this and I've said I'm editing this report. So I can edit that. If I wanted to, I can move things around or move into slicer. But the key for me is this. So if I went and did a new analysis, and let's just open, say, one of the ERP ones as an example. In this case, I've got a stage that I'm going to open up, but the fundamentals don't change. The important thing to note is this: if you have information in a format that people can understand and are able to use it to build the reports, then you can and you can trust that, then BI suddenly becomes self-service. That's where BI turns into self-service, where you can trust what information you have. You've put it into a format that is digestible, and you know when they're building a report, if it's a gross margin or a quantity or whatnot, where that information is coming from. That's when you've made BI self-service. So in our case, our information is produced in the form of a cube. Power BI can connect to that cube or to the data warehouse itself and build the cube on Power BI. But essentially, a cube consists of two things: measures, dimensions. Measures are values. So if I open this up as an example, where you see a ruler sign, this is directly coming from a table within the source. I have no data there, does not help. So it's standard drag and drop, point and click kind of stuff, and you're building that report. Okay, discount is not there as well. But essentially, measure is a value within the system. So amount, profit, line amount, and so on and so forth. Where you see a sigma sign, this is a calculation we've created. Let me see if there is some data. If I drag that, that's a calculation. Probably not, shouldn't have added that. But that is a calculation you've either created on the cube or which is publicly available to the whole business so they can use it. And this is where standards or governance around calculations that the business can use, commissions, gross margins, and so on. Those things, if you want to standardize, you can do that and put it on the cube, and then anyone can use it. So that's a measure. If I refresh this, it'll only show me certain dimensions that I can use. And the dimension is how do you group that information by. So as an example, I'm going to just group by customers. And here I've taken a hierarchy that I have created, and that splits it into UK and American customers. And if I drill down further, it'll give me those customers. You haven't seen me build a drill down report, but ZAP works in such a way that every time information is created, it will build the underlying transaction against that. And if I put it into Designer, I can easily choose what columns I want, what columns I want to add, and so on and so forth that way. So that's an analysis report. A very quick example. I can produce a chart. I can change the chart design. I can put legends and so on and so forth. All that clever stuff that happens on the visualization side. All of that is available. So that's a very simple way of creating a report. We do things like report packs, management packs, the whole rich text stuff where you can produce it once a month, template it, and it gets produced automatically at the end of the month, goes to certain people in the business. You can even have text running, and you can even put conditional alerts on top of that. So if a number has gone higher than what it should have been or lower than what it should have been, then it produces a certain information that for people to take action on. So those are the kind of clever stuff that ZAP can provide. But the fundamental element that I wanted to raise here was in ZAP, if the information is on the cube, you can produce pretty much any report you want off that cube, be it the reports that are pre-built that we provide or something you want to do on your own. All of that is available. So kind of ad hoc reporting. The final piece or the third element that I want to talk about is, and now I've gone to the first step of the product, the model itself. How do you create that model? And what's that pre-built element coming there? As an example, I've got a D365 F&O model available. Push this out and show you as an example. So the first time when you connect, make the connections, and we connect at application level. The first time when you connect, and in this case, I've connected to actually three elements, an Excel sheet, an ERP, and when you connect, this is what happens. So I'm going to just walk you through an example of the connections and so on and so forth that are related to it. So in the case of D365, we connect at the source level, at the application, it's application ID, Azure AD, and so on and so forth. Once the connection is made, if I just close this down, we bring every table that is available. So in this case, there are some custom tables in this example. So we bring everything that is there. And as I'm scrolling, you can see the scroller. There are thousands and thousands of tables that are on that particular source. So we bring everything. This is my staging area. So once we've got it, let me just turn this around so you see the maximum. So what happens is, this is the source table, but we also bring in the metadata, all the relationships it has, and whatever information more we can bring in. But if you clicked on, say, a certain information, say, suppose I clicked on journal entry, it'll preview that information for you as well. Oh, sorry. Just click that again. It'll preview that information for you as well. So show you the tables and stuff that are available there. Let me just move on whilst it's loading there. What we can do is, from that connection that we've created and connected, we've identified some core tables on that ERP. And that core tables we've transformed into plain English. So if I looked at the same table, so general ledger, say, and if I looked at the finance module, and this is my ledger actuals. If I open this, I can just walk you through the transformation. I mean, one transformation, so this is the source of the information. One transformation obviously is it's turned into plain English. You can have descriptions. It's brought details of the information. So again, you can preview the information here as well. It brings details of all the columns that has data. So you can preview the information. You can decide what columns to bring or not. It runs a transformation process, so identification of keys, dimensions, measures that we've created. So this is a measure, a value. I'm taking it into the cube. That's how easy it is to put something there. I've created a calculation as well on our retained earnings. You can run SQL expressions and so on and so forth. But essentially, you can do quite clever stuff here. You can run unions. You can do lookups. You can create calculations. We've created backend relationships as well within there. So this is like that massive step of acceleration where if you have, let me show you this. So these are kind of the connectors we have with the product. If you have some of these applications, the acceleration we provide is tremendous. I mean, you can spend weeks, months, sometimes even years to do this and not reach anywhere. More often than not, when people try building their own data warehouse, they end up limiting to 20 tables or 50 core tables, which can cover 70-80% of their standard reporting. And that's as far as it goes, because this process is not easy. But if you were on one of these stages, ERP, we cover 4 vendors: Sage, SAP, Syspro, and Dynamics, or ERP, CRM market, and stuff like that. We can bring that huge acceleration to your business very, very quickly. But if that acceleration is not there, it is very easy to go for a source that I've connected. Let me go this down. I've connected to bring a table into my data warehouse, or within the table itself to go into the columns that are available for you to bring into the queue. All of that is available. So there is no limit to I only connect to your core tables. There is no limit to I only connect to your core columns. If we are able to connect, we bring everything that is available at the source, and through that, everything from the source becomes available to you to report off. So I'm just going to leave it on here. I'm conscious of time as well, but high level, that's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I wanted to structure. If I go back to my diagram, that's essentially what the product is. Multiple sources. It's data management plus BI. You can replace my BI with ZAP or Power BI or Tableau. We support all 3 tools. Data management is where our strength is. Data management, and the extension of that data management is the reporting, the pre-built content we produce across these 4 vendors, which you have. If you have one of those tools that we can, applications that we support, you can literally be ready in half a day to start using and building reports off. So yeah, that's what I wanted to cover.